I never told anyone this story. Not really, not the whole truth of it. But 53 years later, I still feel the weight of David's head on my shoulder, like it happened yesterday, like I could turn right now and see him there in the flickering light of that drive-in screen, his breath warm against my neck, his hand finding mine in the darkness between us. It was July 1969, the summer everything changed. Not just because we put a man on the moon, though everyone remembers that. For me, it changed because of a Tuesday night, a showing of Easy Rider, and the moment I realized that the ache I'd been carrying in my chest for 2 years had a name. I was 17. David was 18. We'd been best friends since freshman year when he'd defended me from Rick Patterson's crew behind the gym. I was scrawny then, all elbows and bad posture, nose always in a book. David was the kind of guy who moved through the world like he belonged everywhere. Captain of the baseball team, but not the meathead kind. He actually read the books in English class. He asked questions. He saw people. He saw me. That summer, we were inseparable. My parents worked late at the hardware store they ran, so most evenings David would show up at my house around 6, and we'd drive around in his brother's Impala, windows down, radio up, talking about everything and nothing. We'd park at the reservoir and watch the sun set over the water. We'd get burgers at the diner on Route 9 and argue about whether Dylan had sold out by going electric. Normal stuff, friend stuff, except it wasn't normal for me. Every time he laughed at something I said, I felt it in my stomach. When he'd punch my shoulder or ruffle my hair, I'd lie awake that night replaying it. And when he talked about girls, about Cindy Morrison or that college girl he'd met at his cousin's wedding, I'd feel something dark and terrible twist inside me, something I couldn't name because in 1969, in our small Connecticut town, there wasn't a name for it that didn't come with violence attached. The drive-in was David's idea. "Come on, man," he'd said that Tuesday afternoon, sprawled on my bedroom floor while I pretended to study for a summer school math exam I didn't need but had taken just to have something to do. "Easy Rider, we gotta see it. Everyone's talking about it." "I don't know," I'd said, though I already knew I'd go. I always went where David wanted to go. "It'll be an experience. Cinema, man, art." He said it in that mock pretentious voice he used, but his eyes were serious. David loved movies, really loved them. He could talk for hours about camera angles and symbolism and what a director meant by a certain shot. He wanted to go to film school in California, though his dad wanted him to take over the family construction business. "Fine," I'd said, like he'd talked me into it. "But you're buying the popcorn." His smile could have lit up the whole room. We got to the Starlight Drive-In just before sunset. It was packed. Summer of '69, everyone wanted to see the movie about freedom and rebellion and the open road. We parked toward the back, away from the families with kids in pajamas watching from station wagon tailgates. David backed the Impala in so we could sit on the hood, but when the mosquitoes got bad, we moved inside. The thing about a drive-in is the intimacy of it. You're in your own little world, this bubble of space that's yours and whoever you're with. The speaker hangs on the window, tinny and distant. The light from the screen washes everything in blue and silver. And you're close, closer than you'd normally be. Close enough to smell his aftershave, that cheap stuff he wore that somehow smelled perfect on him. Close enough to feel the heat coming off his body in the summer night. The movie started. Peter Fonda and Dennis Hopper on their motorcycles chasing freedom across America. The soundtrack was incredible. Steppenwolf, the band, Hendrix. David was transfixed. I kept sneaking glances at him in the screen light, watching the way his face changed with each scene, the way he bit his lower lip when something moved him. About 40 minutes in, during the commune scene, David shifted. He'd been sitting sort of sideways, leaning against the door, But now he moved closer to the middle of the bench seat, closer to me. "You cold?" he asked, though it had to be 75 degrees. "No, I'm good." "Yeah, me too." But he didn't move back. 10 minutes later, maybe 15, his shoulder was touching mine. Just barely. Just enough that I was aware of every breath he took, every small movement. My heart was hammering so hard, I was sure he could hear it over the tinny speaker sound. Then came the scene in the cemetery. The four of them on acid, the camera swirling, the statues looming. It was disorienting, intense, beautiful in a way that was almost painful. And maybe that's why David did what he did next. Or maybe he'd been working up the courage all night, all summer, all the 2 years we'd known each other. He put his head on my shoulder. Just let it rest there, heavy and warm and real, his temple against my collarbone, his hair tickling my neck. I stopped breathing. I'm serious. I forgot how to breathe. Every cell in my body was focused on that point of contact, on the impossible fact of David's head on my shoulder, in public, where anyone could see through the windshield if they looked, where it meant something, where it was dangerous, but also where it was dark enough that maybe it could just be two friends, tired, watching a movie, where we could have this one thing and pretend it was nothing, except my hand was on the seat between us, and then his hand was there too, and then his pinky finger hooked over mine. Just that, just the smallest possible connection, and I thought I might die from it, from the want and the terror and the absolute perfect rightness of it. "This okay?" he whispered, his breath against my neck. I couldn't speak. I nodded. We stayed like that for the rest of the movie, maybe 45 minutes, an eternity. His head on my shoulder, our fingers barely touching, both of us pretending to watch the screen while actually just existing in this moment we'd created. This small, secret moment that nobody else knew about. When the movie ended, when Billy and Wyatt died on that Louisiana highway and the screen went black, David sat up slowly. He didn't look at me. He cleared his throat and said, "That was heavy, man." "Yeah," I managed. "Heavy." We drove home in silence. Not the comfortable silence we usually shared, but something else, something charged and uncertain. When he dropped me off at my house, he finally looked at me. "Thanks for coming," he said. "Sure, any time." "I mean it. It's better with you. Everything's better with you." Then he drove away, and I stood in my driveway shaking, trying to understand what had happened, trying to understand if it meant what I desperately hoped it meant. The next morning I called him. His mom said he'd left early, gone to help his dad on a job site. I called again that afternoon. He was out. That evening. He was tired, his mom said, probably just going to turn in early. 3 days passed, then a week. David was always busy, always out, always unable to talk. I drove by his house. The Impala was there, but when I knocked, his little sister said he wasn't home. I finally cornered him at the baseball field where he was practicing with some guys. He saw me coming and his whole body tensed. "Hey, stranger," I said, trying to keep it light. "Hey." "You avoiding me?" He didn't answer, just threw the ball back to Tommy Ricci. "David, come on, talk to me." He finally looked at me and his eyes were scared. Actually scared. "I can't," he said quietly. "I can't do this." "Do what? We're friends. We're just friends, right?" "Yeah, friends." He said it like the word tasted wrong. "Look, I'm heading to California next week, early. My uncle got me a job out there and I figured I'd go before school starts." "Next week? But we were supposed to have the rest of summer." "I know, but this is better. This is good for me. Fresh start and all that." I wanted to grab him. I wanted to shake him and ask him why he'd put his head on my shoulder, if he was just going to disappear. I wanted to tell him that I felt it too, whatever it was, and we could figure it out together. But this was 1969. In our town, guys like us didn't figure it out together. We pretended it never happened. We ran. So I let him run. Okay, I said. California, that's great. Really great. Yeah. Will you write? Sure, man, of course. He never did. I saw him one more time before he left. At the diner with Cindy Morrison. She was wearing his baseball jacket and laughing at something he'd said. He saw me come in, and his face went pale. But he didn't wave me over, just gave me a tight nod and turned back to Cindy. I got my burger to go. David moved to California. I heard through the grapevine that he got into UCLA Film School, that he was doing well. Years later, someone said he'd gotten married. A wife named Jennifer. 2 kids. I went to college in Boston, studied literature, spent my 20s in a fog of dates with women that never quite worked out, always finding some reason to end it before it got serious. It wasn't until I was 31, living in New York, that I finally let myself admit the truth. That I finally found the courage David and I hadn't had that summer. I came out, found community, found love, eventually, built a good life. But I never forgot that night at the drive-in, never forgot the weight of his head on my shoulder, the way his finger hooked over mine, the moment when I felt, for the first and only time, like David wanted what I wanted. I'm 70 now. I have a partner of 23 years named Michael. We have a small house in Vermont with a garden and 2 ridiculous cats. I'm happy, I really am. But I still think about David every single day. Sometimes I wonder if he thinks about it too. If he's in California with his wife and his kids, and his grandkids now, living a good life. But sometimes at night, he remembers that drive-in, that moment when we were brave enough to reach for each other in the dark. I wonder if he regrets running, if he regrets not writing, if he wishes he'd been born in a different time, when 2 boys could hold hands without fear, when love didn't have to hide in the darkness of a drive-in theater. Last year, Michael asked me why I'd never tried to look David up. Facebook, he said. Everyone's on Facebook. You could find him. I thought about it for a long time. I even typed his name into the search bar once. David Christopher Brennan. Hovered over the enter key. But I didn't press it, because maybe the not knowing is better. Maybe the memory of that perfect moment is enough. Maybe if I found him now and discovered that it meant nothing to him, that he barely remembers it, it would break something in me that stayed intact all these years. Or maybe I'm just still a coward, still that 17-year-old boy too scared to fight for what he wanted. But here's what I do know. That night at the Starlight Drive-In changed my life. It was the first time I felt seen, really seen. The first time I let myself want something true, even if just for 45 minutes in the dark. And even though David ran, even though we never spoke about it, even though he married a woman and built a life that didn't include me, I'm grateful for it. Because he gave me that moment, that small, brave moment when he put his head on my shoulder and hooked his finger over mine and showed me that I wasn't alone. That what I felt wasn't wrong or sick or evil. It was just love. And maybe that's enough. Maybe that one moment of connection, of being fully yourself with another person, is worth a lifetime of remembering. I still watch Easy Rider sometimes. Michael knows to leave me alone when I do. I sit in our living room in the dark and I let myself go back to that Impala, to that summer night, to the feeling of David beside me. And for 96 minutes, I'm 17 again, and anything is possible. Then the movie ends, and I'm 70, and David is somewhere in California living a life I'll never know. But I carry that night with me, every single day. The weight of his head on my shoulder, light as a prayer, heavy as the whole world. That's my story. That's my secret. 53 years of carrying this moment like a photograph in my wallet, worn soft at the edges from too much handling. And maybe telling it now, speaking it out loud into the world, maybe that's my way of finally pressing that enter key, of saying to whoever's listening, we were here, David and I, we had this moment. It mattered. It still matters.